Hello everybody, this is the grade 12 theory lesson. This is unit 4A and the topic today is cadences. So cadences, what are they? Well, in a nutshell, they're musical punctuation marks. Just like we have when we speak in conversation, different points of inflection. We can differentiate between questions, statements, etc. But the way in which our voice outlines or highlights certain words or certain parts of a conversation, or when we're speaking in a sentence, will signify what's taking place. So in music, it's the same kind of idea. So musical punctuation marks that signify the temporary or final conclusion to a phrase. A cadence is formed by a specific progression of a minimum of two chords. An example that we learned last week or reviewed was the dominant seventh or the dominant seventh resolution. That's an example of a cadence, and we're going to look at that again today. So although the same two chords can occur anywhere in a musical phrase, the two chords are only considered to be a cadence when they are the final two chords of a phrase. So, there are 5 types of cadences. Again, we learned one last week, and we're going to learn about the other 4 today. So, the different types of cadences have different levels of finality or finality when the tonality of the piece, within the tonality of the piece, depending on the chords that are used. When we use 2 cadences in a musical idea, there must be a weaker cadence in the midpoint and a stronger cadence at the end of the phrase. So, let's look at what we've got for cadences. So, 5 types again. So the first type of cadence that we've learned about is the perfect cadence. And this one has the highest level of finality. And we call this one full close. It's the most definitive way to end a musical thought, basically, as a punctuation point. There's no guesswork involved. We know this is the end of the piece of music. Just the sequence of the chords that are taking place. So in a major key, we're going from the dominant to the tonic. We could also go from the dominant seventh to the tonic, which I've got on the board here. We'll look at both of those and what's taking place. And in a minor key, it would go from the same thing. It would be going from the dominant to the tonic, in this case minor, or the dominant seventh also being a minor case as well. We've also got plagal cadences, and a plagal cadence is not quite as definitive as the perfect cadence, but it's pretty close. And this one can still be used to end a phrase, and this one is most often associated or known as the church Amen cadence. Basically, every hymn that's sung in a church has the plagal cadence happening at the end, right? That's where this one is really gained its notoriety and its usage. The next type of cadence, so we're getting a little bit less definitive, and this is the imperfect cadence, and it's basically the opposite. We're going from the tonic, supertonic, subdominant, or submediant, and we're going to the dominant in each of those cases. So a 1 to 5, a 2 to 5, a 4 to 5, or a 6 to 5. It's not as strong as the cadences ending on the tonic, obviously, because it's ending on the dominant, but it's a good midpoint cadence, and we call this one a half-close cadence. So you might come across this one. Typically, you'd see this in the middle of a phrase, not at the end. And then we've got the deceptive cadence, and as its title might imply, it begins with the dominant, so it's to the listener, it sounds like it's going to be a perfect cadence, or it's going to be a full close, but it ends on the submediant, or another unexpected chord. And we call this one a false close, again, because we've been deceived as the listener. We anticipate dominant, okay, we're going to the tonic, but when we go to the 6, it's deceptive, and that's where it gets that term deceptive cadence. The last type of cadence, which it does give a sense of resolution, but it's also unexpected, and this is the tierce de Picardy, and this only exists in a minor key, and it's when we go from the dominant to the tonic. But you notice, unlike a perfect cadence, instead of resolving on the minor tonic, it resolves to a major tonic. So the third of the chord must be raised by a semitone in order to create that major third. So it's only found in a minor key. Final tonic chord is changed to minor chord instead of the tonic minor chord. Differing opinions as to why this is the case. This originated in France, and it's basically it was decided that we got to lighten the mood a little bit, so to speak. So we need to end phrases, rather than ending in minor keys, let's end them in major keys, just to add a little bit of positivity perhaps at the end, again, because we have a very strong connection with minor and major tonality, and you know, all of us, we associate, you know, major tonality with happy or pleasing, and then minor with sad, or you know, those types of emotions. So tierce de Picardy is used to that effect, to basically reverse what the expectation is. It's you know, we know we're coming to a close, oh, but now it's actually going to be, oh, it's major. This, and all of these types of cadences, they do exist in modern times. And the Tierce de Picardy, And I Love Her by the Beatles, I don't know if any of you know that tune, but the very, very end of the tune, it ends on a major chord instead of a minor chord. So there's an example of, you know, hundreds of years later, we're still using it, and there's other examples too. But cadences still take place today. We still will come across them, not just in classical harmony. So when it comes to writing out cadences, there are 2 rules of thumb that we need to follow. We also got to remember, in this first 2 examples, what we learned last week in terms of what the voices are doing. So if the 2 chords, for writing cadence, if the 2 chords have a shared common tone, you keep it in the same voice, but then you move the other voices to the closest possible note. The other rule is if the 2 chords do not have a common tone, the upper 3 voices are going to move in contrast or in opposite direction to the bass voice. So let's look at the first 2 examples. I've drawn some perfect cadences here, 2 different keys. Let's look at C major to start. We can identify, just like we did last week, what our notes are. So key is C major, we've got that. We know we're dealing with the dominant chord, we're going to the tonic. So we know we're going to be, the notes that we need for a dominant chord in C major are G, B, and D, the root, the third, and the fifth. So we can go ahead, okay, so here's our root, G, which, good, because it is the root, because we don't have an inversion indication here, so we should have a G as our root, we do. Here's the B as the third, here's the fifth as D, and here is an additional root on top. So we have our 3 notes, oh, make that a third, not a B. Root, third, fifth, and another root on top. Great. So we're resolving to, now let's look here. So we've got this one, we've got a root. We're going to C major, right? So C, here's another root. Here's our third, and here's our fifth. So last week we talked about the rules that are at play and how, you know, the root's going to stay the same when you go from the dominant to the tonic, and it's going to become the fifth of the chord that you're resolving to. And then we would specify, you know, type of inversion, or if that was the case. But remember, that was the exception to the rule last week. So we have rules, but then we have exceptions to these rules. So we do not want to resolve in a perfect cadence to the tonic chord without having the root note as the root of the tonic chord. So if we left this G, even though it's shared by both of these chords, we still, right? We have a G here, we have a G here. We don't want to share that same note if it's going to be in the bass, because that's going to give us that sense of imbalance. It's going to be a little bit ambiguous. We want a very strong definitive ending. So this is when the fifth or the root here actually doesn't become the fifth or stay the same and it becomes the fifth. We want to make sure we've got that root. So this one does change a little bit. But if we look at the other notes, if there are shared tones, we're going to keep them in the same voice. We did it here with this G, so this one stayed the same. D, we're going to go, in this case, we've gone up. That's fine, to an E. We need a third in this chord. And if we've got, here's our other third, we need to go down, so we're going to go, or we need to resolve that one as well. So we're going to go to the next closest note from B, which is C. So to give you an idea, again, this is the exception. We learned that last week, that, you know, dominant triads resolving to the tonic, we don't want to have any inversions that we're dealing with. So that's why that one actually has to move. Looking at it now, so if we look at the next example, B flat major, same concept is going to be applying here as well. This time we have a dominant seventh, so we actually do have, you know, an additional note in the chord, and then we're going to be condensing it or reducing it to basically 3 notes, right? Going from 4 notes to 3 notes. So the dominant chord in B flat major is based on an F, and because it's dominant, it's indicated with this indication here. We know we're in root position, so we've got our root here as F. We need an A. We have our A here as the third. We need a C, which is up here as the fifth, and then our seventh. In this case, it's going to be an E flat, and that's going to be our seventh. So there's our root, third, fifth, and seventh. Even though these notes are in different order, this is what determines, the inversions are always determined by the bass note, and in this case, it is the F. So we are in root position, regardless of what the other voice or the other notes above are doing, as long as the root's in the right spot. When we resolve this chord, we're going to look and say, okay, do we have any shared notes between these chords? Well, resolving to B flat major, so we need B flat, we need D, and we need F. So we did have, looking at all these notes, we don't have a B flat, a D, or an F in the upper three voices, and we would have had it down here. However, because, again, we need to have a really strong sense of resolution, we're going to make sure that we're not ending, this root isn't going to become the fifth of the tonic. We want to move that up so that it becomes a real strong sense of resolution ending on a B flat. So this root note B flat, and then the other voices are going to move to the next closest note that they can go to, with some variability in there too. So this A natural makes sense to go up to a B flat. So we have a root here. The E flat, we're going to go down. Could have gone up to the F, but we just decided in this case we're going to go down to give us our third in this chord, and then we've got our fifth, and we're going to go down with this one. Rather than have an additional third, could have gone up, but we can go down as well. In this case we did, and that gives us another root. So this, again, 3 roots and a third. We've got our thirds, we've got our roots. We are good for a perfect cadence using a dominant 7th chord. Okay, let's look at some of the other ones. Going to go down to plagal cadences, and I'm just going to redraw this. So I'll show all of the different, we'll go through each of these. And let's see, let's pick the example. Sure, let's actually do a minor example. So we're going to do E minor, and you'll notice that for these cadence questions, I'm not worrying about half notes. I know they are in your guide. I'm just, for simplicity and time saving each, I'm just going to be doing whole notes for these. Voice it the same as what we've got there. And we know in this question we're going plagal, so we're going 4, and we're going to be going to 1 in a minor key. Just fill these rest of these ones in really quickly here. And G. Okay. So key is E minor. We've established that. We've got our key signature drawn in place. Remember, this is E harmonic minor. So the 7th note, if we have any Ds in here, we need to make sure there's a sharp in front of them. So really quick, A, C, E, A, G, E, B, E. No D sharps to worry about. We don't. The raised 7th is still there. It's just we don't have it in this example. So then we're going to look at the question and determine, okay, the chords that we need. So E minor, we got the 4 chord. We're basing it on an A natural as the root note. Again, we're in root position. We potentially don't have to be in root position. This could have been an inversion, but it's not in this case. So we've got an A. We have our C natural. And we have our E natural followed by another A. So we have our root, we have our third, we have our fifth, and we have another root there as well. And we know that we're going to be resolving, again, to the tonic of our key in E minor. So we're going to be going to that resolution as well. So with this one, again, the rules are at play. If we have a shared note or a common tone between the chords, keep it in the same voice, move the other voices to the closest possible note. In this example, the way that this one was written, we're going to be facing the same dilemma as what we had previously, because we want our tonic chords, if we're ending on a 1, just like we did with a perfect cadence, the plague, we want it to be fairly strong as well. And I should actually label this as well. So we want a pretty strong sense of closure, even though we're going from subdominant to the tonic. So when it comes in terms of writing our chords or our cadence, we want to make sure we're ending on the tonic of the one that we're in. So let's look at the other voices really quickly, though. So any shared tones are going to remain the same. So this one, the 5th, is now going to become the root. So you can see there, just like we did last week, dominant 7ths, that is what takes place. 5th becomes the root. We're breaking those. The exception, obviously, is down here as well, right? So let's have a look at the next voice. So we've got root there. Let's go deal with the tops. We're going from an A. We're going to bring this one down to the G. This is going to become the 3rd in E minor. The C natural is going to be going down to the B, which is going to be the 5th. And this one. Now, actually, this root, in this case, we're just going to go, again, giving a strong sense of closure, we're going to move it up to the root. You could have brought it down to this E below, but keeping it on the staff is just making things simple as well. So you can see in this resolution, we've got our root, we have our third, we've got our fifth, and we've, again, doubled up on our root note. So there's an example of a plagal cadence in a minor key. Let's see if we can do another minor key. Yeah, let's do maybe an imperfect cadence. So we'll do the example in your guide, and we'll do it in the key of A minor. Keep things even simpler. I'm not going to worry about a key signature. Oh, there's our music. Maybe take a break. Actually, I'll film the rest of this and then I can get to it. It's actually perfect timing for a musical interlude, whatever this is. Okay, just thought about doing my deceptive as well, but don't have the time for that. Okay, so an imperfect cadence. We know we're going to be resolving from a 1, a 2, another chord basically, going to the dominant. It's the opposite, or rather, sorry, we're going from the tonic to the dominant. It's looking at deceptive. So we know that we're going to be resolving in this case. So we're going up to the dominant. So let's look at our notes. So A minor. Well, we're in root position, so here's our root. We need our third, so A, C, and E. So we've got another root here. There's our third, sorry, our fifth, and this is our third here. And then let's look at the resolution. So shared tone's going to stay in the same voice. We have one here between these two chords, going from this is the opposite of what we were doing in these other questions prior to this one. So shared voice, keep it, or shared note, keep it in the same voice. Everything else moves. So going to the dominant of A major is based on an E, so E, G, and B. Oh, and also remember too, this, because we're in a minor key, this one does have a raised seventh as well. There's our E, there's our G sharp. If we didn't have the sharp here, this could not be dominant, okay? Or major third, this would not work this way. So we must make sure we have that G sharp. So we do. So we've got, based on E, so here's our root, here's our third, here's another root, and there's our fifth. So this third's going to go down, become the fifth. This root, sure, go down, become the third. Now this root, similar to what we had before, it's going to move up again because we want this one to have that sense of, it has to be remaining in root position. So if we're going, we can't just simply, bring this can't be any other note but an E. We can't make it a G, we can't make it a B because this is telling us has to be root position. So this note has to be matching what this is indicating here. So that's why you're seeing that E there, and that's why you couldn't have, again, put a G or a B, even though those are part of the chords. But because it's root position, it has to have that as its base note. Okay? So we're going to look at the last two. We're going to go deceptive, and then we're going to go to the tierce de Picardy, which only exists in a minor key. So I'm going to really quickly go draw these next two examples. All these theory videos, you get the added bonus footage of Mr. Bunning drawing grand staffs and dealing with this crazy staff contraption from long ago. You even get the squeaks as I go across. Ooh, squeaky. Okay. Grand staff. Shouldn't be timing myself. Okay. So deceptive. Going to be deceiving our ears. So let's go back to a major example. Sure, why not? So E flat major, let's draw our key signatures. Should write it down here. So E flat major. And we know we're going to be deceptive, so we're going from the dominant, and then we're going to go to the submedian. So let's go ahead and draw in our dominant chords and our voicings here. So D, and then we're going to go deceptive. So we're going to go here. We need a G there. We need this one here, and we need D to go down to the C there. Okay. So let's look at this one, and let's analyze the notes that we've got. So E flat major, what's the dominant? Should be a B flat, and it is because we're in root position. So here's our root as B flat. We got another root here, so B flat, D, and F, right? So there's the fifth, there's the third. Now let's look at the resolution. We're being deceptive again in this cadence. So what's taking place is here, because we're just, if we look at the two chords, so do we have any shared tones between these chords? And E flat major, so B flat, D, and F is the dominant. We go up to the sixth, F, A, and C are the notes. There are no shared tones between those chords. So this is when we're going to incorporate that second rule of thumb, which tells us the upper voices will move in contrary motion to the bass voice. Okay? So that's an important element to remember. And again, it's going to be, all of these things we're looking at are in root position. So the bottom notes of each of these chords must match what we're indicating here. So E flat major, the sixth chord, is a C natural. So this is the root, right? And because this one goes up, I'll draw this over here to become the root. Because this voice moved up, oh, I'm making a mess of that arrow. Okay. We've gone up with our bass, therefore all of these upper voices have to go down. That is the rule. And we have done that. So let's just look at here what's taking place. So going to the sixth, so E flat major, our root, so C, we need an E and we need a G, so this root going down. So this one becomes the fifth, right? We're just bringing this down. The F in this case is going to go down to the E, so this is going to become the third. And then we've also got to go to this, the third is going to go down. This is actually going to become our root as well. So there are our notes. You can see contrary motion. That's what's taken place when we resolve a deceptive cadence. The deceptive cadence will always have the second rule invoked, if you will. It will always have the contrary motion taking place because none of the chord tones will be shared with between each of the examples. Okay. The tierce to Picardy cadence, major example, doesn't exist because again, this is only found in a minor key. So let's look at that example. Let's use the one we've got here. So G minor, we're going to be going from the dominant and we're going to be resolving to the major tonic, not the minor tonic, even though we're in a minor key. However, we still need to make sure if there are sevenths that are altering these pitches, that we are altering those sevenths as well. So let's go ahead, we will draw in this cadence. There's our raised seventh, which we do have in the dominant. We knew that already. We're going to be resolving down here to the tonic. I'm going to leave this for now. There's the G, and there's the D. Okay, so let's look at it. So key of G minor, two flats, raise the seventh. It's always in effect, and actually does need to be invoked here as the F sharp. So G, the fifth note of G minor being a D natural, right? So there it is dominant. It is in root position, so that's good. So the notes D, F sharp, and A. And if we didn't have the F sharp, again, this could not be in uppercase Roman numeral for 5 or the dominant. It just simply would not work. So we've got that as our raised third. So let's look at the rest of these notes. So we've got our root here. There's our fifth. Here's our third. And we've got another root here as well. Now with the tierce to Picardy, we can treat it as, a perfect cadence, if you will. So the same kind of rules we're going to apply. We're not going to, this root's not going to become the fifth, and we want it to have that full sense of close, even though it's, there's another twist to how this one's resolving. So shared voices, yeah, we're going to keep our shared tones, keep them in the same voice. So this root's going to go over to here. For G minor, it's going to become the fifth, right? So it's just going to, that case it actually does do that, unlike down here, because we want to have that strong sense of resolution. The third of the F sharp is going to move up a step. This is going to become the root for G minor. The fifth being an A natural. In the bass clef, this is going to go up to the B flat. So this is going to give us our third, because we need to have a third. And then the last one, this root, if this one did stay the same on D, even though it is found in the chord, again, it wouldn't give us that sense of resolution, but it's got to go down. So this one's going to become our root as well. We forgot one critical piece of information. What we've drawn right here, if we were just to have this and listen to it, we'd actually have a perfect cadence in a minor key for G minor. It would be fine. However, tierce Picardy, we have to make this a major chord at the end. So we need to have a major third. We currently have a minor third, right? Remember this one as the B flat. So we got to make sure that we raise this. Now this doesn't go with the seventh note of the minor key. This is just whatever the third is in the minor key. You've got to raise it. Now because this one was a B flat, we're going to be using a natural to represent the necessary raised third to create a major third to give us that major tonality at the end of that. There are all of the cadences. I'll label this one. Then in your guide, you're asked to write a whole bunch of cadences. So we've got to do a perfect cadence for F major and A minor, do a plagal for D flat and C minor, etc., etc. So I would like everybody to use MuseScore when you're writing in your cadences. So you can do the guide work in the guide by hand if you like. Submit that as a PDF. Also do these questions in MuseScore, or you can do all of that in MuseScore because you got to do it anyways. Export a PDF, submit that file in addition to the MuseScore file, and I can use that to make comments and things like that, or any corrections if we need to do that. Okay? That concludes our lesson today on cadences. I know this was a longer lesson. This has a lot of content, but the nice thing that it's on video, you can go back and you can review different points in it. But yeah, that's it for cadences for today. Thanks everybody, and we will see you at the next lesson. Bye.